There are many people who pretend they have a fear of death. They don't. It's a disguised form of fear of life. And it's out of the fear of life that someone will prefer to choose a dead life, a life in hiding, a life buffered by medicines or alcohol or drugs of some kind. Fearful of leading a life of following their true heart's desire and their calling to greatness, and preferring to remain small and secure. And in that they are avoiding not only their own greatness, but that very possibility of leading a divine life. And so a dead life is chosen. A self-strangled life. When one has the courage to recognize that it's always the fear of life that's the issue. But I mean full living, not half living. Then one has to ask, what is it about life or death? Because ultimately the two are the same. That creates such fear. And those who claim to have fear of death, what is it about death that you fear? It's about not being able any longer to flee from the presence of God. Because here we can deny God. We can say, I don't understand God, I don't believe in God, I don't care about God. Just my narcissistic ego, and think that can be gotten away with. But in death it can't be done. Can't hide. Can't run away. Have no control. And if God calls you, you must go. But what is it about the presence of God that is so fearful? It's God's love. It's love that we fear. Everyone thinks that that's all I want is love, but it's not true. There's a difference between hunger and thirst on a symbolic level. Hunger is for the gross matter, whether it's food or it's lust for groping bodies or it's some other very visceral, meaty enjoyment. But that hunger is always to fill an emptiness with something solid, to make you feel like you exist, to give you more weight, literally, more gravitas, to make your existence palpable because you're afraid of blowing away in the wind, because you realize your ego is too lacking in substance. And so you want to ground yourself. And you want to fill your emptiness by consuming that which becomes poison to you. Mostly people die of their hunger. Not of being hungry, but of satisfying their hunger in the wrong way. Eating too much food, the wrong kind. Just to run away from the emptiness that is our real being. Just to run away from the feeling of being alive. We'd rather be full and aching than alive with the vibrancy of pure energy that is unobstructed. We even hate our own prana. That's why we cut it. And then we need to hire an acupuncturist to help reconnect it. But prana is nothing compared to the direct divine luminous Shakti. And human love, that really we don't want, we just want submission, acquiescence, empty affirmations, possession, control, power over the other, security. There's nothing to do with love. So even human love we forsake. And usually when people do come together, it's only for the purpose of keeping each other in a cage. And to have them there without relating to them lovingly. That's what most marriages are. They're inert, cold wars of non-relationship. And the same is true when we meditate. In fact, infinitely more true, because the love that we dare to encounter is far more than we're able to handle. If you can't gaze into someone's eyes lovingly, how are you going to gaze into the eyes of God and feel the caress of God? How are you going to stand the power of God's love? How can your illusory self endure through the touch of the Supreme Real? It can't. And that's why it's said that you cannot see the face of God and live, but it's the ego that cannot live. And it's seeing the face of God that brings us to real life. The real life that is the death of the ego and the opening to absolute love. And that's what we run away from. And that's why we fail ourselves. And that's why we choose the darkness over the light. If you've ever asked yourself when you meditate and you reach a moment of silence, why does your mind keep popping out of that silence back into chatter? Why doesn't it stay in the silence? Because you know that if you stay in the silence for any length of time, you will begin to feel the presence of God. And it terrifies you. And if you stay long enough that presence becomes luminous, and you can actually feel yourself being encompassed and filled with God's love, there becomes a rush of anxiety. Because you know that it is death that is coming on. Because death is love, nothing else. But love in its purest form, that's so different than human love. It's like a coca leaf compared to cocaine. It's too powerful. And so when you meditate and you begin to really open yourself to silence, and allow the energy of love to flow into your heart, it flows in like liquid gold, like nectar. Like the most exquisite taste you have ever imagined being able to receive on your tongue. But you're receiving it directly in your heart. yet it causes exquisite pain. And why? Because the cells of your body suddenly learn firsthand how thirsty they have been all your life for love. And the pain of that thirst which you had successfully repressed now has to be felt to the full. And the realization that comes with it, that the reason you hadn't felt God's love is that we have rejected it. Not that God has been absent or rejecting us or refusing to give us grace. No, that's all a lie. But because we know that that love will dissolve the ego lie forever. Will dissolve the lie that we are bodies. Will turn our bodies to light. Will turn our minds into our hearts and become pure love. And it is the fear of that love, destroying the ego and its defense mechanisms and its aggressive power and all of its desires for control, and take away all of its hungers and its enjoyments of gratifying those hungers with inappropriate delights of a carnivorous, vampiric kind. It will destroy all that. It will destroy our blindness to the fact that we have been living for that and not for the love of God.